This is now solving quadratics by factoring. There are some rules and steps to solve the quadratics by factoring. The first step is you have to make sure that it does equal 0. That is in standard form. If it's not in standard form, then we can't do it or the answers aren't right. The second step would be to factor any of the rules that you have. Anyway, whether you take out a GCF, or you use the magic X, or it's a bottoms up. However, I want you to factor it. Once you've factored it and broken it up into the factors, you set it equal to 0, and you solve each factor by setting each one equal to 0. I'm just erasing to give myself some space, but I'm going to be doing these 3 problems all over again so that you can see and hear and listen to what I did and why I did it. In the first problem, it is not in standard form. It is equal to 7. So your first step would be to subtract 7 from both sides. And you'll have x squared minus 6x minus 7 equals 0. Now that I'm done, let's go through my factoring rules. Is this a look where I can look and take out a GCF and make my life easier? No. So I'm going to have to do an x. I'm going to do an x on the side just to save myself some space. The middle number goes right down. Negative 7 goes up at the top. What two numbers multiply to 7? Just 7 and 1. And it has to be a negative 7 to make a negative 6. So I've got x minus 7 and x plus 1 equals 0. I have now factored it. Now that the equation has an equal 0, I take each factor and set each one of them equal to 0 and solve for these 2 equations. I can probably do this in my head, but for the first one, I'll just give you some steps and show you. You'll get 7, and then on this side, you'll have negative 1. So you have 2 answers. You could just combine it together using a comma, 7 and negative 1. You can write negative 1 first or the 7. It does not matter. For the second problem, it is not in standard form. So the first step is to make sure that it equals 0. Subtract 15x from both sides. And I can't combine those. So it's x squared minus 15x equals 0. All right, so now let's factor. To factor, you always look. Look, can I make my life a little bit easier? Yeah. Why don't I factor out an x? They both have an x. It's not 3 terms. I mean, I could do an x like this problem, but let's not. If I factor out the GCF, which is x, what is left over? X squared, take out 1x, I'm left with 1x. And 15 divided by nobody is 15, or 1. And x divided by x cancels, leaving me 1 times 15, which is 15. Now that I have 2 factors, technically this is a factor. We set each one equal to 0. And I already have x equals 0 done. That's one of my answers. And the other one, if you were to solve, you would get positive 15. And there you go. Example 3 has a negative 5x squared. So I'm going to cheat and bring the 5x squared to the right side of the equation. That way I'll have 0 here, and then I'll have positive 5x squared plus 3x minus 2. It just makes it simpler when the first one is positive. All right, so let's factor this. Can I look and divide everybody by something? No, can't do that. And I can't do an x because of the 5 in the front, so I'm going to have to do a bottoms up. To do a bottoms up, the 3 goes straight down, so that's the 3. I take the 5 and the negative 2 and I multiply it and make negative 10. This is 5 times 2 is 10, and 5 minus 2 makes 3. So it has to be a negative 2. X plus 5 and x minus 2 are the factors. But wait, I'm not done. Because of this 5 in the front, I multiplied it to get negative 10. I'm going to have to divide it. Divide both sides by 5. And let's simplify. So I've got 5 divided by 5 is 1. Done. 2 divided by 5, I can't, so bottoms up. This is 5x minus 2. And remember, all this madness equals 0. Equals 0, equals 0. And now that it equals 0, you take each one, set it equal to 0, and solve. X plus 1 equals 0, and you'll get -1. 5x minus 2 equals 0. You have to add 2 and then divide by 5, and you'll get positive 2/5. This is where the bottoms up is a lot easier if I had just left it like this and set it equal to 0, because then I would have just added 2/5 to both sides and I get 2/5, which is the same answer. Either way, if you want to do the bottoms up and then take this whole thing and solve for x, that's fine. I'm just thinking of a different shortcut that you can use for bottoms up and solving. Solving is always different. You have to solve and get 2 answers for x. Then the rest of the worksheet, make sure you show all your work so I can tell how you factored them. Some of them will be set equal to 0 already, and then some of them won't, like numbers 5 and 9, and so on.